Hi guys, I'm going to go through some of the 7.6 examples with us this time. These ones will have A values for our polynomials that we are factoring out. Most of them are quadratics. So this is again from our Big Ideas textbook, section 7.6. Hope you guys are doing good. All right, so we're going to look at page 392 from your Big Ideas textbook, example 2, number A, or letter A, whatever the thing is. And so we're going to go ahead and factor this. And we're going to do this just like we did yesterday or the other day with our polynomials that didn't have an A value. So what I'm talking about with an A value is this A, B, C thing here. All the ones we did in 7.5 had that invisible 1 up there. These time there's going to have numbers. So we're still going to factor them. We're still going to do just the same thing. We're going to take our A, B, and C, and we're going to put them in our X frame. So we're going to do our X like this. And it's all floppy again. That's okay. So we're going to put our A, C on top. We're going to put our B on the bottom. So in this case, it's going to be our A is this 4. Let me change colors. We're going to do our 4. I don't know if that purple even shows up, so let's go ahead and go back to blue. We're going to have our A is the 4. Our C is that 3. And we're going to multiply them together. So we have 4 times 3 giving us a top number of 12. So for our B, that's this guy right here, he just comes and hangs out at the bottom. We're going to put this 13 here. So now what we need is we need numbers that are going to multiply to be 12. There we go. Come on. Multiply to be 12 and adds to be 13. So what we're going to do is if we need to, we can make our list of factors. So let's come over here, make our little T-table of 12s, things that multiply to be 12. 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. So we're going to come in here. Which of these things has a sum of 13? Because we want our sum to be 13. Well, 1 plus 12 gives us 13. 2 plus 6 would give us 8. 3 plus 4 would give us 7. So pretty clearly we need to use our 1 and our 12. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come back over here to our big fraction, over here to this guy, or not fraction, big equation, expression, because it doesn't have an equal sign. Ugh. All right, so we're going to come, and the A section doesn't change at all. We still have our 4x squared. Our C term doesn't change at all. We still have our plus 3. All we've done in this one is we've unsplit this middle term, where we've uncombined our like terms. And what this is going to be is this turns into a plus 1x and a plus 12x. It doesn't matter which order you put them in. You could have put the 12 in front, or you can put the 12 second. It doesn't matter. You'll get the same factors each time. So now what we do, just like we did yesterday, is we're going to bust this up into pairs. So we're going to do pairs, and remember we always want to have a plus in between. Otherwise things get tricky. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at each of these pairs. So for this first pair, we're going to take our greatest common factor out of both terms. What is the greatest common factor of these two terms? It's x. It's just x. We're going to take an x out. And then what's left over when I take an x out of 4x squared is just our 4x. When I take an x out of 1x, we just wind up with plus 1. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the other pair. Let me use a different color. So you're going to use the same thing on this other pair. So we're going to look for the greatest common factor of these two things. Between 3 and 12, I can take a 3 out of both of those. So what we're going to wind up with when I take 3 out of 12x, we're left over with 4x. When I take 3 out of 3, yeah, they kind of cancel out, but we've got to be careful because there's still a 1 there. All right, and now, since these guys match, we know we did it right. And so what we wind up with when we put it in our factor form is our 4x plus 1. And then our two little friends that came outside, this guy, and this guy. So we wind up with our x plus 3. And so if you had one of these, like on the homework, I think there's 1 or 2 where you have to solve it after this. Let's say this was set equal to 0. We would then split these apart into our 2 separate pieces, just like we've been doing before, our 4x plus 1 equals 0, and our x plus 3 equals 0, where we're solving for our two separate pieces. So just like we've been doing before, this one doesn't ask us to solve, but it's good to kind of practice that situation anyway. And so in this case, we'd wind up with subtracting 1 from both sides, and we'd have 4x equals negative 1. And then, I'm running out of space, divide both sides by 4. Teeny tiny 4. And we'd wind up here with x equals negative 1/4. That's a 4. And over on the other one, we would subtract 3 from both sides, and we'd wind up with x equals negative 3. So it's just good to kind of practice that solving thing that we have done before. We did that in 7.4. I'm pretty sure we practiced that in 7.5 as well with the other ones. So it's just kind of good to keep good practice on that, because solving is one of those things that we need to do. All right, we're going to do 2 more. All right, so we're going to go on to page 392, example 2, part B. And we're going to do the same thing we did before. We are going to do our A term, our B term, and our C term, just like we did in the last one. So we're going to do our X frame, and we can put our A times C on the top and our B term on the bottom. Now A times C, that's our A term is our 3, C term is our 2, and when we multiply those together, we get our 6. The tricksy thing in this one is that this B term is actually negative 7. So we need to watch out for those signs. That B term is negative 7. So what that means now is we need something that is going to multiply, there we go, to be a positive 6 and add to be negative 7. So when we're looking at things that multiply to be a positive number and add to be a negative, that means that we need to come up with 2 terms that have the same sign. If it's going to multiply to be positive, they're going to have the same sign. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our factors of 6, which we probably don't need quite that big of a table. So things that are going to multiply to 6 that add up to be 7. So we're going to have things like 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. Well, if I look at our sums of these, 2 plus 3, that's going to give us 5. 1 plus 6, that's going to give us our 7. But if I want them to be a negative 7, I need to make this a negative 1 and a negative 6 to make a negative 7. So they're both going to be negative in order to give us the factors that we need. So we're going to have our negative 1 and our negative 6. So what that does is that uncombines the like terms over there. It splits that middle term. So they wind up with 3x squared. That guy hasn't changed. Our 2, that guy hasn't changed. What we have now is instead of having our minus 7x, we have our minus 1x. Oops, changing colors. Our minus 1x and our minus 6x. It doesn't matter which one you put in front. The thing we need to be careful about when we split this into our pairs for factoring is we're really tempted to put the other parentheses right there. But that's not what we want. We want it to have a plus in between. We need to put a plus right there. I'm going to get rid of that. My parentheses ran away. So we need to squeeze a plus in and put it like this, because we need there to be a plus there. Otherwise, our signs go all wonky. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pull our greatest common factor. We're going to start with the first pair. Works a lot easier for us, so let's go this way. So what's our greatest common factor of these two terms? It's going to be an x. And what's left over when we take an x out is going to be our 3x minus 1. Bring down the plus. Then we're going to look at the greatest common factor here. And a big old clue for us right here is since this is a minus sign in here, also since this has a minus sign in front of this first term, we're going to want to take out a negative number. We're going to take out a negative number. So what is the greatest common factor between 6 and 2? It's going to be 2. But I'm going to make it a negative 2. Because we want these, the inside signs to match. Which I was going to point out, but I don't think the pointer shows up for you guys. So when I take a negative 2 out of negative 6, I'm left with a positive 3x. When I take negative 2 out of a positive 1, I'm left with a leftover negative 1. So you got to be super careful when both of your middle terms are negative, because it's going to get a little weird. But that's okay. We can deal with weird. We can deal with weird. Y'all know me. We're weird. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put it in factor form. So we're going to take our what's inside that matched up, our 3x minus 1, and then we're going to take our little guys that were hanging out outside, our GCFs that we pulled out, our x, and instead of putting the plus minus 2 there, simplify our terms, and we just kind of minus 2. All right, so there's example 2. We did both of them. Yay! We're going to do one more. We're going to do example 4 from page 393. This is the last one today. All right. So we're still going to do the same thing. The thing we got to watch out for is this negative sign out here. This negative sign out in front. That makes things really, really weird. So the easiest way to deal with a negative sign out in front, just pull it out to begin with. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove a greatest common factor of -1 from this whole trinomial, because we should be checking for that anyway, and I haven't said it, but we should be. We need to be checking for a GCF every single time, because it makes your life simpler. It really does. So we're going to take a greatest common factor out of every single term of -1. So if I take -1 out of 4x squared, we're left with 4x squared. If I take a -1 out of -8x, we're left with just a plus 8x. When I take -1 out of +5, we get -5. And I promise you that doing this factoring is going to be less confusing than doing this factoring. All right, so after that, we treat it just like we did. We've got our A, our B, and our C. We're going to go into our X frame with our AC on top and our B on the bottom. Our B being that number 8. Ooh, I don't think that shows up. Our number 8. And our A term being 4. Our C term being -5, which means 4 times -5, that's going to give us -20. So now we need things that are going to multiply to make -20 and add to be 8. Well, if I'm going to have something multiplied to be a negative number, that means one of the terms is going to be negative, which means things get a little weird. So we're going to look for our factors of 20, but instead of looking for when they total, when they sum up to 20, we're going to look at our differences. So let's start with our factors of 20. Boop, boop. So we're going to have our 1 and our 20. We're going to have 2 and 10. 3 doesn't go in. 4 goes in 5 times. And there we are. That's all of them. All right, so let's look at our differences then. So what if we did 1 minus 20? That gives us -19. It's not quite what we're looking for. 2 minus 10. Well, it gives us -8. That gives us a start there. How about 4 minus 5? Make sure it's not magic. So 4 minus 5 gives us -1. All right. So this one's probably our best option up here, but it's not quite right with 2 minus 10, because that gives us -8. So instead of doing 2 and -10, what if we did -2 and 10? -2, and now we're at +10, gives us a +8. So -2 and +10 is going to be what we split the middle term into being. So we still have this -1 hanging out up front. He's that obnoxious little kindergarten line leader that's just going to sit out front, stay at the front of the line, and we're going to ignore him. He just chills. So then we're going to have our 4x squared, who hasn't changed. Changing colors. We're going to put our -2x, our +10x, and then our -5 hasn't changed from the beginning. Well, from here. So then we do the exact same thing. We're going to break it up into pairs with a plus in between and factor our greatest common factors. That -1 still hanging out front. He's still there. He's just obnoxious and hangs out front. We're going to have our parentheses. Then our greatest common factor between 4x squared and 2x is actually going to be a 2x. So we're not just going to pull 1x out, we're going to pull 2. So what's left over when I pull that out is going to be a 2x. What happens when I take 2x out of -2x? We're left with -1. All right, bring down our plus. Greatest common factor of 10x and -5 is going to be 5. So then we're left with 2x minus 1. And they match, which means we did it right. Yay! All right, so then, changing colors, We just got to write in factor form. We're almost done, and I'm going to do it like over here because we're running out of space. Otherwise, I'm going to draw on top of my face. Well, I can do that. So we're going to have our -1, and then we put our guys that are inside, our 2x minus 1, and then we're going to have our guys that were outside, our 2x, and, sorry, I got to change colors to right over me. Oh, well, let me write over the picture. And plus 5. Oh, there's a 5 there. Let me rewrite that. That didn't work. That'd be funny. Oh, well. So we had our -1. We had our 2x minus 1, these guys that were inside. And then we have our 2 homeboys that were outside, our 2x, and our plus 5. And now we're into our factored form. So we're fully factored here. All right, so this little -1 is just going to hang out in front. So if you have a negative a value, you just want to factor out a negative first. Always check for a GCF. You should always be checking for a GCF. But making sure if you've got a negative, pull that negative out first. All right. So make sure you're taking care of yourself in this time at home. I know we're getting back into school and things are kind of getting crazy and everything's getting a little stressful. So take some time. Make sure you stay healthy. Make sure you keep mentally healthy. Do something that makes you smile every day, even if it's just for a couple of minutes. Go outside, take a walk, throw something at the ground. Not at any other people. Don't hurt people. But do something that makes you smile. Okay? It'll help your mental health be what we want it to be. And then you have your big ideas is your math homework. So the big ideas lesson 7.5 and 7.6. That would be the video before this, and this video is the 7.6. And those are both due this week. So get those in, get those done. Send me any questions that you have them. I am happy to help you. I can either send you a video, we can set up a Zoom call, or I will explain it to you very carefully with words. All right, so do your best. Let me know if I can help you. See you later.